Good morning, everyone. Ty Williams here. I am excited to start off a great chapter, a brand new chapter with the TREC Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee this morning, 10 a.m. And we're going to call this meeting to order. And first, we will go ahead and go into discussion and possible action to amend April 8th, 2026 meeting minutes. And we're not going to do that, correct? All right. So we're going to keep those minutes the way they are. Public comment, including any written public comment received on non-agenda items. Okay, so we did get an update, correct? Abby, it came out yesterday.
Oh, yes, that was a supplement, but that will actually be for an agenda item. That's agenda item
Number 6. That's right. Okay.
So we haven't received any public comments on non-agenda items.
Right. And then so didn't we have someone who wanted to speak this morning though?
Yes.
We wanted to move them?
Yeah, and that was for on the transaction coordination agenda item 7.
Okay.
And he requested that to be a little bit earlier if you are able to. Yeah.
Do we want to let him do it right now? Is he on?
If you want to open that agenda item up now, you can.
Yeah, let's go ahead and I think we can do that. Is he on right now though? Can you tell?
Yes, he's on.
Okay. I want to help him have a productive day, and I appreciate him getting on here to talk. Let me see here. Let's look at this.
So it's Mr. McComb. I see him on. He's currently muted, and so this would be for discussion and possible action regarding transaction coordination agenda item 7.
Okay, Mr. McComb.
And it looks like
Welcome.
he's muted.
He's muted.
Let's see.
And I did change his access just a few minutes ago to allow his mic and camera, so he might have to look somewhere there on Teams to unmute himself. It should be available to him now, though.
Yeah.
We'll give it another second. If not, we can just move on to agenda item number.
There he is. Something happened.
3. Might be on there.
Okay, it looks like maybe he wasn't able to speak,
Unmute.
so I think he must have left, and he might come back in. So I'll just allow his access when he re-enters.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to give it a second here?
There he is.
There he is.
There he goes.
So Amber will just have to change his access really quickly.
No worries.
Okay, it looks like it's been changed. There we go.
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
You all can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Welcome.
And
Welcome to the meeting. We appreciate you getting on this morning.
Of course. I'm going to be here all day, so I don't mind waiting until you get to number 7.
Are you going to stay on the whole time?
I'll be here the whole time. I'm working from home all day.
Well, we would love to have you speak, and I didn't want to have you lingering on there if you had other things to do.
Sure.
Well,
it's up to you guys.
Peter, we appreciate it. If you would wait, it would be great for us to go in order, and then you can share right when that topic comes up. That would be amazing.
I'll be here. Thank you.
We appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on then. Let's move on to the next meeting agenda item here. Staff update on May commission meeting, including committee recommendations. Love to hear it.
It's me. Hey, everybody. I wanted to circle back on this. At your last meeting, the committee moved forward 2 recommendations. One related to intermediary and scenarios where the designated broker is the same with 2 different brokerages. And then the other one was a recommendation regarding a disclosure related to transaction coordinators. So if you weren't in Houston, I know some of you were, I took those recommendations to the full commission. I walked through as far as it related to intermediary. The commission as a whole gave feedback that they weren't too concerned about that. They were okay with the current interpretation, which, as you'll recall, is that if it's two brokerages with the same designated broker, that's an okay scenario when it comes to intermediary. And then as it relates to the disclosure, this one actually went to broker lawyer committee, who took it up. And I know that John George in particular had paid some attention to it. Ultimately, they wanted the feedback from the full commission on that. I think in large part because anytime we do a disclosure or we start moving in a new direction with contract forms, that's never a small conversation. So getting that commission feedback from them was important. And ultimately, the commission did not want to move forward with that disclosure idea at this point. And so that's the feedback that we've given to the BLC. So I just wanted to close the loop on that. And I'm not like bringing you exciting news, but we took it, we talked about it. That conversation happened. So I want to close the loop as it relates to those recommendations. I know Abby's got something else related to the membership of the committee.
Yes. So just an update. This was presented at the May Commission meeting. It was a proposed rule change, adding public members to this committee. The reason for that is there is actually a state law which requires public participation when you've got an advisory committee that helps shape the regulation or the regulated occupation. And so because of that law, we took this to executive committee and they recommended this proposed change go forward to the commission to add 2 public members, replacing 2 broker members to keep that composition somewhat, the ratio somewhat in line with our other committees. So that was proposed at the May meeting. That could be adopted at the upcoming August meeting. The earliest that change would implicate this committee would be next year for next year's folks, so like January 1st. So wanted to provide you with that update as well. I'll also just mention this really quickly. I know some of you may know this, but Rena, our committee member, Rena, had to step down from the committee, and Bob Baker, our alternate, has now been tapped to replace her. So Bob is now a full member of the BRAC.
Welcome, Bob, and Rena, we'll miss you and wish you had been able to continue. But Bob, we're happy you're here, my friend.
And Rena's leaving for exciting reasons, everybody. So
Very good. Is that conclude our update there?
That was it from us.
Hey, we appreciate it. Thank y'all for the good update. And totally understand it makes perfect sense. So we will move on and move forward with the next agenda item. Discussion and possible action regarding the requirements related to inactive real estate license holders going back to active. Okay, so here's this is an interesting discussion, and I've got some decent ideas. Decent, you know. So, and I say that wholeheartedly because I have put some work into it, and the point is, though, when I start talking about it, it may not be as decent as I thought they were, or they may be just extraordinary. I don't know. But you guys are going to tell me what you think.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it because I think it does make perfect sense to re-engage people. And I go back to when we talk about inactive status, it's kind of like you get off a bike for a little bit or you've had training wheels, you're trying to learn how to get on that bike and ride forward and figure things out. You might fall off a little bit, but if somebody's there watching you or somebody's there guiding you, things seem to work out a little bit better. Those training wheels can come off a little bit faster, right? Or you can pick it back up, because you've had some experience, but you took some time off. So the same thing goes for anything else. You look at scuba diving, it's the same thing. If you don't dive for a year, you need to take a refresher course. anything that you haven't done in practice, you should, kind of get up to speed on is the way I think about things. And this is kind of what we talked about the last time. We talked about maybe putting together like a course or something like that. Well, I have a reasonable proposal for what we could call this course and what it might actually look like and what could be in it. And I wanted to get your feedback on it, and then we can just go from there if that's okay with y'all.
And
All right, perfect. So,
sorry, can I interrupt you? I'm sorry, I just did. Okay, I want to do two things before we do that because I'm excited about this. I want to make
Thank
sure
you, Vanessa.
I am. I mean, this is fun. This is what we do, right? The number one, I was remiss when I gave my report that I did not introduce our new director of licensing, who doesn't know I'm doing this. So I'm doing it in real time. He's very excited. This is John Hubner. So he's our new director of licensing. Comes to us from the world of TDI and where he did licensing and permitting there too. And he is excellent. Like he's already fit right in with us. I'm real excited about the ideas he has for licensing and improving our turnaround times and just really taking us forward as we are moving forward. So we welcome him.
Thank you.
He will also be, a resource for you guys when you have questions about, well, what about this or that, or what are the requirements for this? He'll fill in that role too. So we're real excited to have him. He is new, so we haven't fully hazed him, but you guys know. This meeting will be part of it. No.
Great.
Vanessa, tell me his name again, please.
His name is John Hubner. And so I wanted to introduce him, and I think in part for him, and then also because we've got some folks on here that may not be as familiar. Do you mind just doing a little bit of a recap? Maybe do a little bit of one, but a little bit of a recap for John about where we started on this and where we're headed on the course.
On this
agenda item, just like a 2-sentence background of what we did.
Sure. Okay, so the thought process is, hey, John, welcome, by the way.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here, and thanks for being a part of the meeting with us. It means a lot. And what I'll say is that kind of the thought process behind inactive license holders is that inactive license holders can just stay inactive for as long as they pay and do their minimum required hours, right? Their 18 hours. If they continue on, they can just continue on being inactive for, I believe it's perpetual, basically, until they decide they want to go active again. And that caveat goes to them paying their licensing fees, them doing their CE courses on time, and then moving forward. Well, if they want to go active, they can go right back active at any point in time, as long as they meet those requirements and they pay their licensing fees and things of that nature. Well, the thought process is that if somebody goes inactive for a while, they've been out of practice, and the thought is maybe we come up with something called like a refresher course or something like that, where it's kind of like a broad brush approach to just re-engaging them into the practice of real estate and making sure that they're up to speed on new rule changes, contract changes, addenda changes, a lot of different things like that, where it's kind of all encompassing, but just kind of like I hate to say it, but it's kind of like a crash course to get you really restarted and make sure that you're on point for the Texas consumer.
Sure.
You're coming out of practice, and we want to make sure you're really ready to hit the streets prepared. That's the best way I can say it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Perfect.
And just to put a little finer point on that as well. So if you are inactive, you don't have to take CE. But if you want to go back to active,
you can just keep paying.
Right. If you want to go back to active, then you have to take the required CE looking back 2 years.
Okay, so you have to catch
That's
up.
actually a very good point. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so even more of a reason why this is important. So let's just kind of go through it real quick, and I'll keep it brief and to the point, so that way you guys, I'll give you an overview, and then if we want to drill down on anything, I can. I have it pretty much fully laid out here, but it's called the Texas Return to Active Readiness course, is what I've named it. You know, and we're going to get you ready to sell, get you ready to help your consumers, and make sure that you're really ready to go. It's a pre-sponsorship course, okay? So it'd be required before they can go active again. Now, and I know what you're thinking, would this be required in addition to the 18 hours? Or would it be required to be one of the hours within the 18 hours that we require right now? My thought on this, to make it simple, is to, and this is just my thought, is to basically make it part of an 18-hour required, one of the 18-hour required courses, only if you're inactive for like one renewal period. Okay, this is just my thought process. So here's how it goes. Required before sponsorship of for license holders inactive for one renewal cycle, 2 or more years, essentially. Course length would be 4 hours as the minimum reentry gate. 6 hours would be the strongest version, really to get you a full-fledged, you know, reintegrated into the system, essentially. Make sure you're really up to speed. Inactive status and lawful reentry, I think it makes perfect sense. So the module would cover those things, where it would talk about the difference between an inactive license, an expired license, active sponsored status, clarify what a person can and cannot do before sponsorship, set the legal sequence in course completion first, sponsorship eligibility, and kind of go over the basics on what you need to do. It'd be a very short module, essentially. Module 2 would be minimum competency update, review the rule processes, changes since the license holder last practiced. Okay, so we kind of go over what happened in the last 2 years, essentially. So we would need to update this on a regular basis. Reinforce the duty to be confident before working with consumers. Teach when to stop, seek instruction, or decline activity until you're really properly active and before you engage in any real estate activity. Because a lot of the time what we see is people go inactive and then they get a phone call. Are you still doing real estate? You know, Marvin? You know, and Marvin's like, yeah, I'm still doing real estate. And then Marvin's like, let me go get active real quick, right? Well, Marvin would never let his license go inactive, but I'm just using him as an example. So agency disclosure and consumer communication, refreshed IABS timing to make sure that they're doing that and presenting that in a proper manner. Representation, going over representation forms, making sure that they understand that that is required. Intermediary basics, talking about the intermediary piece. Cover what you can and cannot be said to public before sponsorship. Again, just reiterating that. Prevent accidental agency, false status claims, and misleading guidance. And then 4, contract forms and forms risk recognition, and basically focus on current form awareness, not full contract instruction, because obviously we're going to require them to take a contracts course, so we don't want to double dip on that one. We want to talk about, you know, groundwater requirements, updates to the seller's disclosure, different things like that, HOA issues. Teach returning to license holders how to recognize risk before touching a transaction. It really is one of those things where we're just going over a reiteration of, you know, the basics. Module 5, advertising, AI, and public communications, what can and cannot be done and what's new on that front, because I do have a feeling that we're going to be talking about AI here in this meeting, so I figured I'd include it. Fair housing, ethics, and consumer protection, talking about those different things. Covered confidentiality, honesty, documentation, unauthorized legal, tax and lending advice, making sure we don't do any of that stuff. And then we really give practical scenarios throughout each one of these little modules. And then we talk about module 7, fraud, cybersecurity, and records. Make sure your record keeping's up to speed. making sure you talk about wire fraud because that's a continual issue that keeps coming up. Explain how modern transaction fraud has changed during the last cycle that they worked in, because new things are going to keep coming up, especially with this AI stuff. I think it's really important for us to keep that front of mind. Scenario assessment and certificate. Basically, I really think that this could be something that would be good because it's almost like a broker responsibility course. It's just really more all-encompassing for an agent that's been inactive. In my thought process is I really like the broker responsibility course. I may be a little biased on that because it's a great course, but I think that makes the most sense because there's a lot of scenario-based things in there, and I think it's got a lot of valuable information. And this could be something that would really be great for an inactive license holder. Now, like I say, this is in my mind. This is just, I'm giving you like the overview of what I've been thinking about and just wanted to get your feedback and your thought process. If I'm way off base here, or if it's something we need to look into, or look, we're good with the way it goes. Marvin. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like good ideas. I also like education and professionalism. And I think this idea addresses those aspects. Question for you.
Yes, sir.
Did this idea come up based on a specific problem that you've observed in inactive license holders, or is it more of an idea from a preventative measure?
I think it's more of a scenario where we have seen in the past, I mean, just based on brokerage level type things, we've seen people come in from inactive status or recently get re-engaged in the business of real estate. And you can definitely tell from somebody who's experienced or actively engaged in the real estate practice versus somebody who's just come back in. Literally the other day, we had an agent engage with someone and they were confused on some of the new things that are in the contract. Now, look, I do feel like that's a broker's thing to make sure that they're educating their agents on. So, and clearly that broker was not doing what they needed to do. And I said, look, you really need to go back and talk to your broker about this. And I said, well, have you not been doing this for a while? Your license is a 6, is a 6. So it was definitely seasoned. And so basically they said that they hadn't been practicing for a while. They'd been inactive and they recently reactivated their license again. It just kind of went hand in hand with what I'm thinking here. It's me being proactive rather than reactive is my thought process.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mike.
My question is more on what happens if depending on how long somebody's been inactive. You mentioned once they've gone over 2 years, you've missed an entire cycle. And somebody, I don't know, started a family and took 4 years off or 5 years off. Mm-hmm. And you're missing a lot of stuff, and especially the way we're going now, which I think we also should discuss sooner or later. Both Texas Realtors and the Real Estate Commission are changing forms every 3 months, and it's killing us. Those of us on forms committees, it needs to stick with the legislature and do it every 2 years. But anyway, different issue. But how do you catch up somebody that's missed 6 years? Well, is that course going to do that, or is it going to, how far back can it go to? And I don't know how often this happens. I mean, somebody may know the answer that we have so many people that apply back after 4 and so many that apply back after 6, and most of them are after 1. I just don't know the stats on that.
And you know what, I thought about that too, Mike, and I think you've got a good point. And I don't know where I lost it in translation, but the point of folks being able to stay inactive and not have to take their CE until they go active, that's even more of that's even more of something we need to think about there, because I don't think there's any way we can continually be all encompassing for folks that have been out of the business 2 cycles, 3 cycles. I don't know that there's a way to do that, but I feel like it's a good, it could help level the field a little bit. And like I say, I'm not trying to add more CE hours at this point. So I'm just trying to make it as a requirement within the scope of what is required right now. That's my thought process, is keep it within the 18 hours, make it a 4 to 6 hour course. You know, and obviously we can send it over to ESAC and have them put together something like this. But my point is it give them a basic outline and say, hey, run with this thing. That's kind of the idea. But I don't think there's any way we can address people who've been out of the business for that long, you know?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of my first intermediary in probably 15 years. And first thing I did is call 3 of my broker friends and go, okay, remind me what I'm doing here, because I just hadn't done it in that long.
Right, right.
You know, and I hate them, but because
Yeah.
I'm a little guy, but you know, I don't have 100 agents, but that type of thing, I think that's going to be your biggest issue down the road. And maybe whether we just have to pick a starting point and go, and then when something happens, it happens. So.
Right. No, for sure. Thanks, Mike. Bob, you've got your hand up, sir.
Okay, and I think Larry had his up before me.
Let's see. Hold on. Let me see. Okay.
Yeah, he does.
Okay. Hey, Larry, you go
Oh,
ahead, my friend.
you're going to make it like you didn't see me. I see that. Okay. All right.
Get this guy.
That's okay.
Go for it, Larry.
So I like the idea. I mean, I know we talked initially, I think, about, using the broker responsibility course, which was already, kind of in place, kind of like that. But I like your idea more, where it's very, very specific to somebody getting back into the business. And what's everybody's thought around this? What if we had them before the course, before they could complete the course, that they at least had to be back to an active status? So let's say that they were back to an active status, and let's say in the first 30 days, I'm just using that as an example, that they were completing that education in there along with the supervision from the broker.
So you're saying the 18 hours, they would allow them to go active before they completed the 18 hours, is what you're saying?
Well, you're talking your 4-hour course, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So in your 4 or your 6-hour course, while that course is going on, that they're actually under broker supervision.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just throwing that out there for just kind of everybody, just for for a little bit of a thought, because, and I wouldn't call them like we don't want to use the word probationary status, because we use that term for something else, but something along that line to where they're active, but yet they're still being under the active supervision while they're completing this course, the coursework coming back in.
More like a kind of a quasi mentorship type thing.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Now, I think that could work if we made this an additional hours requirement. And I'm just thinking out loud, but if we have it inside the 18 hours, they would be required to take this before they do that. And then maybe you could say, hey, you know what, we want the brokers to be engaged. Obviously, we always want the brokers to be engaged, but
Correct.
Whether that happens or not, it's a different story. But I think it's a good thought process. Look, I'm all about more education, but if we add anything, it takes some fancy footwork.
Oh,
you know what I mean? To get us up to that 21 hours or 22 hours or 24 hours or whatever it would be. And I think that might change things a little bit.
Okay.
Bob, but that's a good point, Larry. I think I like it. Makes sense.
First of all, Ty, thank you for an enormous amount of work on this topic. You put together some really good thoughts. I do need some clarification. I thought we had in place, and maybe Vanessa or Abby can clarify for me, that if you're inactive for a certain period of time, you have certain requirements, that's already in the mix in dealing with your educational requirements. And it didn't matter if it was the last 2 years or one day in the last 2 years, that kind of kicked that in. Seemed like I saw that in the broker responsibility course where it talked about that going to active and inactive. And the other thing is it the same for a salesperson's license versus a broker's license? If you are inactive and your license is at a broker level, you don't have a sponsoring a broker, as the point that Larry was making, you just, tomorrow you can now be back active and doing business. And frankly, some of the most harrowing transactions that my agents have is when the problem on the other side is the broker who's doing the business, and maybe they really don't know. They haven't done something. Like Mike's case, they haven't done an intermediary in 100 years. And so it's kind of one of those challenges. So if we've got that, and I like the idea of some kind of certification course, I think it's a timing issue. And if we stay within the 18, we've got 8 hours in the legal update 1 and 2. We've got 3 hours in the contract. So we got 11 there. So we've got 7 hours to play around with as we work through it. But if you're a broker, you're going to have that 6 hours of broker responsibility. So you only got 1 hour left over in that 18 hours. But I see this thing you're talking about, Ty, is kind of a hybrid of what we have with the legal update 1 and 2, or some of what's in the broker responsibility. But having something makes good sense. It's just the details of how that's going to happen. So those are my thoughts.
You know what, Bob, I actually really think that's a good point. And we talked last meeting, I believe, about us using the broker responsibility course and just saying, hey, look, everyone needs to take broker responsibility. That's a good solution, because that broker responsibility course, I think, is one of the best courses out there, in just my opinion. Excellent course, and it goes over a lot of good things. And that could suffice, quite frankly. But I do think you've got a valid point. And the fact of it being for a broker versus an agent, a sales agent, I think it does matter. And the reason I think your point is very valid. The only difference is it looking at this versus looking at broker responsibility. This is more on day-to-day business activities. And that's the only reason I thought about it later and was like, you know what, I think we need to have something a little different for a sales agent. But I think we do have to address the fact that it's, there's a broker that goes that long being inactive, but they're already required to take broker responsibility. So, I don't know everyone's thought processes on that, but that was my thought process. Is I feel like since we're already making that happen for the broker, this could be kind of the same type of thing for a sales agent, was my thought. It's almost like the broker responsibility for a sales agent. It's just a little bit different. All right. Bob, did you want to say something else? Okay, you're good. Anybody else want to comment on this?
Got Marion's hand up.
Marion, I don't see you on there. That's weird. Marion, go ahead.
Sure. Actually, if we use broker responsibility, that eliminates a lot of the questions that I had, because broker responsibility is so robust. It covers the competence issue. It covers a little bit of everything. There was one other thing but again, if we use broker responsibility, it eliminates it. But I initially thought, if we try to go with a refresher course, having some type of preliminary assessment at the beginning, kind of like a test, that's not necessarily graded, but just will allow you to gauge where they are in the process of how far outdated is their information. What level of competency do they have? So that would be something that ESAC would just have as a preliminary test that you could do up at the beginning, that they, have whatever. But that's only if we go the refresher course route. If we go with broker responsibility, I do think broker responsibility is going to be very all-inclusive, because it's going to cover not only what they have missed, but it's also going to help them understand the protocol, that the broker is in charge, and how and who, and the teams. It covers a little bit of everything. So that's
I do 100% agree. I love that course. Thought processes, guys, on this one. And you've got the great educator brain there, Marion. That's a beautiful part about having you on here, is you've got that educator mindset. You're educating us right now. Anybody else's thought process on this? Do we want to table it and think on it, or do you want to? What are you guys kind of thinking?
Hey, one other quick thing, Ty, can you share with us what you put down so that if, you know,
Sure,
that.
I can. I have it. I have it printed here. I have it printed, so I realize that. Well, what I'll do is I'll send it out to the. Can I send it out to staff and then?
Yeah, if you want. Yes, absolutely. If you want to send it to me, then we can circulate that with the committee.
Okay, will that be appropriate for everyone to look at for next meeting? Is that what we're saying, essentially, since I'm introducing it?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so I'll send this out to staff. They can take a look at it, and then I'll remove one thing on here. I've got my company name on there. I'm going to remove that on it at the bottom, and then try to make it look professional. So I used my own letterhead and thought I'd removed everything, but I didn't. So what I'll do is I will remove that and then send it over to you guys, and then we can reconvene next meeting on this one. Is that cool? Sound like a good plan? All right. Well, thank you for entertaining that and putting some more thoughts into that process. But I figured it'd be an interesting talking point for today's meeting. All right, let's move on to the next. If there's nothing else to be said on that one, let's move on to the next agenda item. This one will be interesting. Number 6, agenda item number 6. Now, we're going to need some actual intelligence for this artificial intelligence talk. Okay, that's what we're going to. I just throw my little jokes in there, but we really need to have some real thoughts around artificial intelligence and regarding the use of artificial intelligence. And this is going to be an ongoing discussion, I am going to tell you, over the course of my lifetime. So it's going to ever evolve, and it's probably evolving at a very fast rate that we don't even realize at this point. And some of the thought processes on this, I've read a lot on what people are looking at for artificial intelligence and how it is impacting the law. It's impacting banking. It's impacting security. It's impacting all kinds of different things. And recently, you heard that they already took down a couple of models, put them back up with some guardrails on them because they caused some other things or some security concerns. And that's going to be an issue as well. So I think we've kind of got to look at the full picture when we talk about AI and how this works. And I can tell you, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I know quite a bit about this stuff, and I like it. I like the AI. So I use it a lot on my own. And I kind of have a good idea of what it's capable of, and I have an idea of what's scary. I've read some things about AI using people using AI to get things done, like looking at people's background for tenant screening. Have you heard this one, Mike? Have you heard that one yet? For tenant screening and credit checks and things like this? Well, the problem is you're sharing information across into a server that is open, essentially, right? It is not safeguarded. It can be subpoenaed and it can be hacked. I mean, it can be seen. And people don't realize what they're sending out there, especially if they're on a consumer grade platform. That's very visible to be seen. The other thing is, so you're sharing your consumers' information over an open platform. The next thing is that when you're looking at artificial intelligence, you may be making a decision, and it could be a biased decision. So it could be doing things, and you may not realize it, but you're violating fair housing. Some of the verbiage that people are using on these automated websites, where they're building web pages and things like this, they could be violating fair housing. They could be violating the Texas Real Estate Licensing Act. They could be violating a lot of different things. And the problem is that they're not, from what I can tell, they're not clearing these items with their broker before they're doing it. So it's kind of like a rogue, hey, I'll go make a flyer and then I'll go make a landing page in an afternoon. I saw this course yesterday It was making a landing page in an afternoon, you know? And the problem is that there's no IABS at the bottom. There's no consumer protection notice at the bottom. It's creating a landing page, but it's not really in compliance with it. And what I'll say is that I think that we can't really license or regulate AI itself, but we can talk about how license holders use AI and the implications of how they do use it and some of the oversight in that. So that's the thought process, and that's the talking point, I believe, for today's AI discussion. Unless I'm missing something, I believe that's what we're going to be addressing. Any thoughts on this? Initial thoughts or anything? Yes, sir. Mike?
I'm seeing this all over on the property management side. Most of the big softwares are already building a maintenance section that is tied to AI, where AI is actually taking the maintenance request and troubleshooting what is going to happen at whatever that particular issue is with the tenant. And while I think we're covered, one of the first questions that came up was, well, if AI is taking the inquiry and AI is sending the quote unquote proper vendor to handle that request without a licensed property manager being in the middle of that decision, is that still following TREC rules where you have to have a property manager being in control of the rent? Now, I personally think that we're probably okay because most of us have a pre-approved limit from our owner to do something on a, you know, where we can send somebody out. And then if it gets over that reserve, then we need to go a different direction. But I'm seeing this a lot, and people aren't, and there's nobody involved in it at all. The software companies are doing this on their own. And I don't think they know or care what the different real estate rules are in the states or the countries that they're producing this for. And so that's going to be where I can see some big problems in that, where all of a sudden somebody spends a whole bunch of money, you know, a whole bunch of owners' money, and no license was involved at all.
Right. And it's really a consumer. It truly is a consumer protection. This is it's going to come up. This is definitely no doubt in my mind that this is going to come up as an issue.
You ought to see what they're doing on screening. I got a my agent called me in her office the other day and she goes, "What do I do with this?" And I said, "Hit the delete button." Some agent, because all the different, and this is in Texas, all the different boards are now giving you access to a screening company, but they're not restricting access to people who have been qualified to get that access. So any agent can hit the button and pull it. She got an email with 29 attachments to it, all PDFs. It was both tenants' front and back of their driver's license, front and back of their social security card, their entire employment history, their the credit, the full-blown credit, all of this stuff, because they were going to apply for a house that we had on the market. And they just sent it to my agent and said, "Here they are, make them good and move them in." And I said, "You hit the delete button as fast as you can hit it. I don't want you to open anything."
That's scary.
You know, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I see AI getting involved in screening, and they're going to do the same thing. So
I agree with you. You know, I'm gonna read you guys a couple of things, and I think will open your eyes. These are some notes that I've got. I put together a few things for AI for our meeting today, and I'm just gonna read it off to you, and then it'll give you some food for thought. Hopefully this helps a little bit. Honestly, I think this is kind of like the biggest one, so I'm going to give you this. Train agents on fair housing language, because ultimately they're responsible. The AI, you can't blame the AI, right? You've got to take responsibility. So fair housing language, advertising accuracy, and consumer disclosures, privacy limits. And this is what you're talking about, Mike, is privacy limits are being violated and they don't even know that they're doing it. Set review standards for listing descriptions, ads, videos, virtual staging. This is a big one. You've seen this virtual staging. Come on, guys. This is a big one. Everyone sees this. Emails, chatbot scripts. Okay. Chatbot scripts. Let me tell you guys, if you have a chatbot on your website and you are a broker, this could be a huge liability for you. Okay. I don't even think anybody's thinking about this, but you can kind of coerce these chatbots into saying things that are definitely a regulatory nightmare. Okay. And social post, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, it'll just do all my social media posts for me. Hey, it's great. I love it. As long as everything's right, then you're fine. But those are some things. Require manager or broker approval for high-risk uses such as lead scoring, okay? A lot of these automated tools inside of these back office systems, they score the leads, okay? Now, I'm just saying based off of some things that we're working on right now, lead scoring is great as long as you're looking at it in a non-biased way, okay? And that could be, we're not just talking race or anything else like that. You've got to look at the way this chatbot or the way this AI is looking at anything. It could be very detrimental. Tenant screening, we just talked about that, and an actual issue that comes up. Lending support, automation on lending stuff too, that's another issue. Valuation support. So, we talk about having the disclosure. We have to have that disclosure on a CMA when we produce a CMA from the system, and it has that disclosure on there. You know what I'm talking about, guys? It has a disclosure on there. Well, a lot of these, and I can tell you, I tested it myself. A lot of these folks are using these valuation tools and they're not providing that language and verbiage on the automated valuations, right? And are we allowed to say valuation? Are we supposed to say, this is what it appraises for? Are we supposed to say, this is what it might sell for? Or could you list this property for? I'm seeing valuations being put out there. And these are things that I think really need to be addressed. The other thing is automated eligibility decisions. Whether you could be using an automation tool to get people pre-qualified. It's just a soft pre-qualification, but if it gives anybody the wrong information, that could be a real problem. And I don't think that brokers are thinking about the implications on these things, but I think we need to bring light to it for brokers to make sure that they protect the consumer, protect themselves, and make sure that they're, providing tools with integrity and some oversight. That's it. That's what I've got here. Thoughts? Marion?
Yes, I do have a couple of thoughts on the AI. I mean, the problem is AI is moving so rapidly that it's very difficult for anyone to keep up with it. And I teach a lot of the AI classes, so I see them do a lot of things in AI. And I think from a real estate perspective and as a broker, the biggest thing we have to help them understand is one, confidentiality. Because see, they don't think anything of uploading consumer information because they want it now. And they want to be able to get something that is pretty, is quick, and is kind of new age. So they're uploading that consumer information. And in some cases, like Mike said, confidential information, because they're not thinking. So we have to have something that says, number one, consumer protection is our number one duty. And everything that we put and write, we need to make sure that consumer information protection is the important thing. Another thing that is very obvious is a lot of the agents use the AI without proofreading it. And when they send it out to us, the masses, social media or whatever, everyone, including, any non-technical person can tell that this is AI, not a human being. Mm-hmm. So we're losing the human oversight you know, which is a big issue. And then another thing that the AI modifications on the images is going really, really bad. We had a situation with a house, and the agent, you know, they disclosed a little bit of everything, which was all AI, by the way. But when you get to the house, everything was modified, which is an issue with truth and, you know, true picture and advertising. But they didn't see anything wrong with making the grass greener, getting rid of all of the, you know, the paint, making the paint pop. So a lot of these issues will become big issues for us because it's a violation. You can't modify a lot of those things. So I think one, and legal ramifications from it, you know, not just fair housing, but what information are you giving to the consumer and where did you get it from? You know, has your broker looked at it? So those are kind of some of the things that I would like to see us kind of really focus on too as well.
I'm just taking notes. Good point. Okay. I think that's a really good one, man. Honestly, that makes perfect sense. And going back to the image modification, I'm seeing it daily inside the MLS. And I know we're not regulating MLS, or we're not doing any of that. But the thing is that if brokers are allowing this kind of thing, it's a problem. So image modification, and what you're saying is that for the consumer protection and confidentiality, that makes sense. If you're sending things out like that, it's a real problem. Now I can't see everybody on the screen for some reason. I don't know why. Let me go over here and make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay, perfect. Anybody have Larry? Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I was just going to add to kind of what everybody said, but yeah, so I think the other thing on the broker side of things, you know, I think we've already added, I shouldn't say think, we've already added a line on the policies and procedures, you know, for the brokerage, you know, kind of regarding, you know, the use of AI. And I think HAR put out something here, you know, in town with that also. So just, yeah, it's just more, it's going to be more broker responsibility on top of all that and what our agents are doing with it. Or, you know, without it, like Mike, you know, on our property management side of things, you know, our maintenance, you know, the maintenance will, they do know their limits, you know, but maintenance will still go in there and kind of go, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And it's pretty amazing. And I think it's really going to be great for the future, but I think it's going to have to be monitored along the way. And I think that's a bigger responsibility for the broker for sure.
Right. Now, my question would be, do we want to have some of these items addressed to add to a course, or suggest adding it to a course that we already have existing? Do we want to, what do you think would be the best course of action at this point? Or we just kind of wait and see, you know? But I think it needs to be a continual topic, because this thing is really growing exponentially, and we're seeing a lot of things happen. A lot of new items come up, and I mean, it's creating a bunch of innovation, which I love seeing. It's amazing. There's so many positives. The issue is that the folks that are doing it, I'll have to change my verbiage on this one, but halfway, you know what I mean, where they're not really doing it the right way. We want to make sure that we're reminding them to do things the right way, and to make sure that your advertising is in compliance, even if it is AI. And if you're getting listing descriptions from AI, it may make up a restaurant, or it could say something that is some kind of a red flag for something like fair housing or what have you. You've got to make sure it's reviewed. And I think some of that is addressed in broker responsibility, but I almost feel like we need to add some more to it on AI, and really give some more real life examples and real-time examples on what's going on with AI and some of the new systems we're seeing go out there, because there are a lot of new systems. And I just think that the innovation is outdoing and outrunning us as brokers. And so I think we got to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Marianne. Oh,
No,
Vanessa.
no, I was just gonna speak to so I'm actually in the middle of the third iteration of AI in these courses. And I'm very aware you can't outrun AI.
No.
You can't regulate AI, if that makes sense. I can't get ahead of regulating AI because AI is already ahead of, I think every day. But what we can regulate are our license holders. And so the position that TREC has taken is it's that there's a person behind AI, right? In all of this, in all the things we're talking about, there's a license holder behind AI. And that's who we can reach. And that's who we can remind that it doesn't matter if it's the AI of 2 weeks ago or the AI of 2 months in the future, we're going to regulate your usage. And you still have to adhere to the rules related to broker responsibility, to the Texas Real Estate License Act. And so it's hard because, I mean, even like some of the stuff you're bringing up, like Mike's bringing up some stuff that he's seeing, and I think, oh, yes, that's good. I can't capture every use, but I can talk, we talked about closed systems, open systems, things like that. I think fundamentally there's not a silver bullet or a single thing you can do on AI except, I mean, I think conversations are important, right? Because we're talking about where we're seeing it. I think these chapters are very meaningful in these books. It's I think the biggest comment we get when people give us their feedback is give us more AI. So I think people are hungry to know, one, what AI is, and two, how it can be used. And so you're kind of split. You've got folks who are afraid of AI and you've got folks who are ready to roll. And we're trying to strike the balance between the two, right? Because if you're not looking at AI, it seems like you're going to fall behind somehow, right? AI is already there. When I wrote the last chapter, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was AI. I use that all the time. And so it's like the, where should I eat or whatever. And it like pops up a bunch of restaurants based on like what it knows about you. And I'm like, I just thought those were close by. So, I think what we can do, we have the power to lay the foundation of AI in these courses and to expand upon it every year. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't cover it in the course books. So we're taking a little bit of a different approach this time in broker responsibility than we have in the last two books. And I think that's important. I think education about broker responsibility and sales agent responsibility, I tie those two things together. In the use of AI. And what's helpful to me is to hear the ways in which you're hearing or you're seeing it being used in misleading, fraudulent ways, in the practice of law. I mean, things like that, right? That's where we can really talk about it in the books, in the newsletter, and our communications. So I think these conversations are helpful, and I can take the things you've mentioned today, because I truly am writing. That's what I'm doing this afternoon. So, we can do that. And I think we can educate. I think the core behind this from the TREC side of things, right? From the regulatory body perspective is there's a license holder behind AI.
Mm-hmm.
And
hopefully.
Yeah.
There could be scenarios.
We're going to find the license holder behind AI. And if there's not a license holder behind AI, I am afraid. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to tie it back to the brokerage.
Right.
And I think that's important. I think it's also important the things that you're talking about, which is don't believe everything you read. Lay eyes on a house. It's similar to the land fraud cases we had, right? Where folks were moving so fast they didn't lay eyes on the property. And so we're going to continue those conversations. This is really helpful. But I wanted to just speak up a little bit about, our plan and where we're heading with AI as it relates to Trek directed education, right? BRC legal update.
Makes sense. Well, thanks, Vanessa. That's really the thing, is we want to bring the light to this, is what I think is key, and appreciate you taking note.
Okay.
Mike.
Question more for the staff. How many, for years, I've seen listings where they, the same 3 clouds have been in the background of a picture on MLS across the state. And everybody knows it, and everybody knows who it is, and they've got the same beautiful green grass on all these things. But I also see a whole lot of people that are putting in pictures in listings, and they're saying this one is AI, or this one has been virtually staged, and here's the real picture, which I think is great. And that way you see what the room really looks like, and then you can see what it could be. And I have zero problem with that, because they put in both pictures. It's when they just put in the one that's the trouble. And I see so much of that it's going to be really tough. When you said you had an AI, you made a little bit, it was a little bit of a joke, but I kind of winced a little bit when you said, you're going to end up with an AI company sooner or later. It's going to make itself. And all of a sudden you're going to have a license out there for something that's not even real. And that scares me to death if something like that happens. So maybe we meet it halfway and say, okay, if it's things you can control, I'm a Navy guy, and so I subscribe to a whole lot of different Facebook groups that are all that publish history and stuff like that. And half the comments are, "This is not that ship. This is not that this. All of this stuff is fake. Whoever did this did a really, really, really bad job." And some of that gets done because it's self-reported, but I don't know where you guys want to draw the line, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's whether or not we can find it, or that people will actually turn somebody in.
File a complaint. Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
that's going to be the kicker. Who's going to file the complaint?
I can talk about filing a complaint in the AI chapter. I mean, I can talk about that and what, the benefits of doing that. So
Not a bad idea.
I really think that's a good idea, Vanessa. Bob. Yes, sir.
Okay, a lot of good information. And Vanessa made a point that we all know somewhere up here, but I hadn't thought about that level, that behind all AI is a license holder. And I think from a committee standpoint, our education responsibility is to make sure the broker and the agents know that behind all the AI is somebody, an individual, real person that we're going to hold responsible. And I think from an education standpoint, now I suspect from what Vanessa's saying, that in the new broker responsibility course, that type of thing will be really emphasized. We're very fortunate in the last couple of years, as Ty points out, to have a really good broker responsibility course. Night and day difference from how we started 20 years ago. So that's a thing. And I think it's one of the things that I don't know what the process is, but we've taken the step, broker responsibility is required of all brokers. I think it needs to be required of all license holders. It is so important as we have that information. And I presume, I haven't really paid attention to it in the legal update 1 and 2, that we probably have some AI in there that with the license holder will get. But I think the education, and to me, the education is, everybody knows you got to be careful, you got to pay attention, you got to review it, but everybody needs to know there's a liability issue here. And some of the liability issues, some of the things that Mike pointed out, that people don't think through. Say, what do you mean everybody and his brother can see it? I didn't realize that. How's that working? And an education of them understanding here's a process. But bottom line is, you need to know you're responsible, and here are the things you're responsible for. And Vanessa's right. It all comes back to the broker, which is the heart of what we do, and the education of the broker to understand. I know you understand that you got to review this way, but what you really need to understand is you're that individual real person behind it all that has to make sure that you know you're responsible. And that's going to be the key, is to educate them on that.
I think you're right, though, Bob. I think the problem is that I think a lot of people think, well, it's AI. I didn't actually do it. It's not a big deal. I think showing the accountability piece is huge. So I'm with you on that. Any other thoughts on AI? Do we want to just make this a continuing kind of a continuing update? If you see something interesting on it, let's just share it and kind of mention it. I think that would be really nice to have. That way that we're kind of the eyes and ears out there as well.
That's right.
So I think it'd be good for us to, and I'm not saying we have to go out and do anything. I just want to keep bringing a light to it. So at some point in the future, something's going to come up and it's going to trigger all of us and say, you know what? I think we need to do something here on this particular item.
And Amber's just shared on the screen the public comment y'all got last night in the supplement, which I think expresses some of the same concerns y'all have been talking about today. Thanks, Amber.
Has everybody read this yet? Honestly, if you haven't, we'll read it on screen. But if you have, that's great. So I think it's really crucial to get this feedback from all parts of the state, and I think it's good. This is actually very good. Any questions or comments on this email?
Bob?
Well, I thought it was well done. I like his 3 things there. There's some things that may not apply, and he talks about that act that went into effect January 1st of this year, which doesn't directly deal with real estate, but has some other things going on there. But what I would like to see, based on the things that Vanessa and Abby are talking about and things that Ty brought up, as a committee, we've got so many things that address AI, the courses, the things that we have in track. I'd like to see us have a handle on where this is all addressed and what issues it addresses and what issue is still not been addressed. As a committee, we need to say, these are all good over here, but somebody needs to know about this over here. And so I admit, as I look at the Texas Realtor stuff on the TREC website, stuff in the courses, I find myself going, what are we not yet covered? What are all the pieces of this puzzle? And as a committee, do we need to have a clear understanding of where these pieces are and what we still need to do about them? And so that would be helpful to me.
That makes sense, Bob. Anybody else have any comments on this email? Okay. Well, first off, we want to say thank you. Anybody who brings in or sends in public comment, it really is very helpful. And it gives us some extra talking points. So, we encourage everyone to send in public comment and give their thought processes, because it does open our eyes. And it does open our minds to different things that maybe we didn't think about. So we try to keep our minds open and our ears open, so that way we can hear what everyone has to say and we move in the right direction. So appreciate that. And I guess with that being said, we can move on to agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding transaction coordination. And we have a special visitor, somebody who would like to speak today. Peter, are you still there, sir?
I am still here.
Hey, welcome. Appreciate you jumping on today, and looking forward to hearing you.
Sure. All right, I'm free to go. Or
yes, sir.
Start. All right. How y'all doing? My name is Peter McComb. I'm coming to you from Rockwall here in the DFW area. I'm a licensed Texas real estate broker and the founder, owner of a Texas-based transaction coordination company. My USA-based team coordinates transactions for hundreds of Texas real estate agents. Working inside this environment every day, I'd like to offer a practical perspective on what's being discussed. And by being discussed, I'm speaking to the last meeting. While unlicensed activities themselves are not regulated, once an individual holds a real estate license, they remain subject to oversight by the Texas Real Estate Commission, regardless of how they characterize their role. The complexity arises when a licensed individual attempts to operate in an administrative capacity across multiple brokerages without a clearly defined line of broker supervision. I understand why that creates concern. When you have a licensed individual working across multiple brokerages, even if they claim to be performing only administrative tasks, it raises real questions. Who is supervising them? Which broker is responsible? And are they truly staying within administrative boundaries at all times? I believe this is not a transaction coordinator issue. I believe this is a broker supervision and license structure issue. Texas already has a framework. The line between licensed and unlicensed activity is well established. The question is not what we call someone, be it an assistant, a coordinator, a VA, or otherwise. The question is what they are doing. And if a licensed individual is performing activities that require a license for a brokerage they are not sponsored by, this is already addressed within the current framework and of course is not permitted. The question we're really discussing is different. It's whether a licensed individual performing strictly administrative tasks should be restricted from working across multiple brokerages. If we attempt to regulate that at the state level, we begin to open a much broader set of questions. These are things I think about all the time. Can a licensed agent perform administrative work for multiple brokerages? Do we restrict them to one broker even if they are not acting as an agent? Do we create a whole new category of license? At that point, we're no longer addressing transaction coordination. We're redefining how licensure interacts with administrative work across the industry. And I think that's why this appropriately lands with the broker. Brokers already have the authority and responsibility to define who can support their transactions, so long as it's within TREC rules. What tasks are delegated and how supervision is structured. From a practical standpoint, transaction coordinators, when used appropriately, provide real value. They help move transactions forward in a timely and organized way. They allow agents to scale responsibly, and they serve as an additional set of eyes on the file, which can actually strengthen compliance and reduce risk for the broker. This is not a niche practice. There are, I'm going to say, tens of thousands of agents across Texas. If there's 130-some thousand agents in Texas, I'm going to guess there's more than 20,000 right now that have established productive working relationships with transaction coordinators. When I first started building my company, one of the only pieces of guidance available, and still is the only piece of guidance available today, is the one-page article on the use of an unlicensed assistant from TREC. While helpful, it's limited in how it applies to how transaction coordination is used today. It feels like there's a gap between the level of guidance and some of the broader regulatory issues being discussed. And what may be missing is the middle ground, which is practical broker level clarity. I do want to say I support the idea of a disclosure. I think that's a practical step. There already exists one in the industry. California has a draft. I don't know if this has been approved or not yet. It's a one-page transaction coordinator advisory form. And it's by the California Association of Realtors. It's not drafted by the Department of Real Estate. That shows and clearly define the distinction between administrative and license roles without adding unnecessary complexity. Something as simple as a one-page broker guide or policy clearly outlining what a transaction coordinator can and cannot do will go a long way in addressing the concerns being raised. In my view, strengthening broker level clarity and education solves this more effectively than expanding regulation. Because the moment we try to regulate the title instead of the behavior, we risk creating far more complexity than clarity. And I did take a look at the I guess it's an exhibit in the supplement from the agent who was voicing their opinion about, TCs causing confusion. And the truth is, she's right. I mean, the TC isn't necessarily causing confusion, but she's confused as to who this person is. And everything I just talked about here is about creating clarity in an otherwise ambiguous role in the industry. I often laugh because realtors are seen as responsive and ambiguous, whereas TCs are systems oriented and clarified, but yet we don't have anything in writing that pulls those two things together. So that's all I have. Thank you.
That sounds good. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and I appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Peter? Go ahead, Mary.
Peter, thank you so much for coming to us today. So you said you do have a TC company, right?
I do.
Where you work across all. Can you give us briefly kind of a synopsis of what you do?
Sure.
And how you protect the confidentiality of your clients?
Sure, absolutely. So every agent, when they sign up, we give them a non-disclosure agreement that they can use that says they're giving it to us, saying we will not disclose their data or solicit their clients. That's super, super important to me, number one. Number two, we do not upload any documents into any artificial intelligence platform, period. We do carry E&O and vicarious liability insurance. There is a separate policy for transaction coordinators. So yeah. Did you ask what do we do to protect our clients' data? Was that the number one? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. Also, we employ LastPass, which is an encrypted password sharing software. So when an agent signs up, they get an automated email sent to them that says, put your data in this encrypted link. It comes back to the company and then it gets shared to the coordinator. So the coordinator never sees their password, but they can log into their sites. We do not send out any DocuSign or .loop documents from a company account. Everything goes through the realtor, and the realtor must approve every draft before it goes out. Those are a few things off the top of my head.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Marvin. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. McComb, for being with us today and for sharing thoughts. It sounds like you have a brokerage, if you will, or a broker license where you're probably receiving the revenue for the TC work that's being done, and that you probably then pay your subcontractors or your independent contractors. In the case of independent solo TC, what is your thought on the understanding of how those people are paid or not paid at closing if they're licensed in relation to their current sponsoring broker?
Sure. So if you look at my name and track, you'll see I'm the broker owner of Texas Transaction Coordinators, LLC. That brokerage is not affiliated with my transaction coordinator company at all. That's a place for me to hang my broker's license. I also sponsor TCs across Texas who do not work for me, who need a safe place to hang their license that are not with a competing broker, such as a Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker or whatever. They just want to be somewhere that says, hey, we're not producing, we have an active license, we sell a unit here and there, but that's not our primary source of income. So in my company, I have a few TCs that are licensed with me. And I think I have 2 or 3 right now that are with the KWs and the Coldwell Bankers, but it's in their advantage because that's local to their hometown or that's local to where they live. As far as how the solo TC is paid, I love that title companies in Texas do DAs. I think it's an easy way for a deduction to be paid at closing as long as it's a deduction out of the agent's taxable 1099 commission. I am completely on board with that. I would say 70% of our closed file count goes through the DA process. I would say 20% goes through credit card online billing, and then the 10% is through bulk billing because we work for entire brokerages and we bill them one time.
Okay. And then if a licensee is receiving compensation on the DA at closing, do you think their sponsoring broker is aware of that compensation that's coming through from the commission at the closing table?
The TC sponsoring broker, it's not seen as earning a commission. It's seen as earning agents will pay, I don't know, they'll pick up the survey fee for their buyer. It comes out of their commission. So coming out of our commission is this fee for my transaction coordinator. That's the structure I know of today, to answer your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I 1099 them. That's how that gets taken care of.
Good questions, Marvin. Peter, one question for you.
Sure.
So on the, and I'm just curious, so if someone is going to, you said they get paid if they drop off money, earnest money and things like that. Is that what you're saying? It's not seen as a commission, it's just seen because they're doing a function of a job, is what how are you classifying it exactly?
Correct. So we follow the guidelines of the use of an unlicensed assistant in Texas. So we're administrative work. We are not earning a commission. We're not commission sharing with any brokers, unlicensed TCs, of course, or even licensed TCs. That's how I see it. But the minute we start performing brokerage activity, which we don't, I say that very strictly, that's where you get into a commission sharing situation.
Okay, and so let me ask you this, are they paid, are your TCs paid for doing their job, even if the deal does not close?
That's a good question, and the answer right now is no, and we're looking into that because it is contingent on the agent earning a commission.
Right, so in order for them to get paid, the deal must close, and a commission must be earned.
Correct.
Okay, understood. All right. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Marianne.
Peter, one of the big questions that you might be able to help us understand. I've worked with several TCs where they literally, from the moment that agent goes under contract, that TC handles that job to closing. And you don't see that agent in until it's like, hey, excited, we're closing tomorrow. Would you mind speaking on that for us, just to help us get some clarity in that?
We don't work with those types of agents.
Okay.
Those agents tend to whittle themselves off our roster very quickly. We see ourselves as we serve the transaction, but we need the agent to be the leader. We can't get our job done unless they're the ones negotiating the amendments, or they're the ones telling us what to put on line 5 on that amendment. So I call them secret agents, and they eventually fall off our roster.
Thank you.
Good question.
We're not going to do their job for them. We're just not. That being said, I'm sure there are TCs in Texas who, the sad part is that same with realtors, you need the money, you'll do whatever it takes. And that's where I get concerned about what you all are concerned about as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense, Peter. Bob, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for your input. And you definitely have a very interesting scenario that, kind of goes to some of what we were talking about with TCs across multiple companies. And we have the issue that we still need to address, licensed and unlicensed. But from your perspective, what do you see would be helpful in the business? What kind of education regulation would be helpful in your situation?
I believe every single broker needs to know exactly who their realtors are working with, period. So I believe every single broker needs to know who is in their files, who is running their social media. There should be a policy in place when they sign up to work with that broker that says, if I hire a TC, this is who it is, and I'm going to let my broker know. So that way the broker has a chance to look at that TC and make the decision for themselves. They're licensed with Coldwell Banker 25 counties over. Sure, I don't have a problem with that. But I think it's important that the broker know who's in their files.
So it sounds like that the brokerage needs to make sure in their policy procedures manual that they address this.
Yes.
And it would seem that when you have a TC across multiple brokerages, you have to have multiple brokers who sign off on that.
Correct.
And because, and the reality is, as was pointed out several times earlier, when Vanessa talked about it, behind this, you have an individual. And we still have the problem with licensed versus unlicensed that I think we still need to deal with. But this is one of those things that falls again to the broker. The broker has to make disclosures. The broker has to understand, here's what my agents can and cannot do. Here are the authorized acts. That'll be in the policy procedures manual. And that'd be a disclosure that the broker makes right up front when they take on an agent under their brokerage. So thank you. That's very helpful for me. I appreciate it.
Marvin, yes, sir.
There we go. All right. Yes, Peter, one more question.
Sure.
I like your thought on the fact that the broker where the transaction is being done is aware that a transaction coordinator from outside is in their files.
Correct.
Do you think the licensed transaction coordinator's sponsoring broker is aware that that licensee is conducting TC work for other brokerages?
I can tell you in my case specifically, yes, because the ones who are licensed with other brokerages were sent to me by that broker saying, Sarah is staying at home. She wants to do TC work. They're well aware. I mean, one of you on this call today is one of our top 4 brokerages that we close a lot of files with. And that delegated broker or the designated broker of that brokerage is with one of my TCs. So we do have a very personal relationship. I do anyways, with who knows who's doing what.
Great, thank you.
Mike, yes, sir.
Peter, you had mentioned that the TCs need to be, the other broker needs to be aware that there's a TC on this contract. One of the issues that has come up in front of this committee is, do we want to put this on the contract itself or not? That a TC is involved in this transaction, and does either the buyer or the seller have an issue with that? I would love to hear your opinion of that one.
Sure. I have 2 views on this. The lesser view is a line on the broker information page of the contract that right below the agent information, you could add a transaction coordinator. I don't care for that view as much as I care for, I love where California Association of Realtors is going with this 1-page document. I do envision this on a Texas Realtors letterhead to go next to the wire fraud notice. So if an agent, for example, if an agent is drafting an offer, at that point, they can disclose that they're working with the TC. And then it can go to the other side as part of that offer, not necessarily attached to the contract.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Let me see here. Let me just make sure I didn't miss somebody. Oh, Leslie.
Ty, this is just throwing it out there. We have a disclosure for a relationship with the residential service contract provider. Why couldn't you do a disclosure like that for a transaction coordinator?
You're absolutely correct. My vision of seeing Texas Realtors on it is probably irrelevant in that case. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. The disclosure of relationship with residential service company. That would make perfect sense here. Something that's dedicated to transaction coordinators. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, wouldn't it be really a good idea to do this when you're doing a buyer representation or a listing agreement? It'd be good. That way we're getting it up front, done with the IABS, the listing agreement, the buyer representation agreement. That way everything's on the table. And if a buyer or a seller has an issue with it, they can address it right there, right at the very beginning before anything exchanges hands. My whole thing is with TCs is transparency and disclosure. The issue is right now, just like Peter said, Peter basically made a very valid point by saying the only real documentation that he's found out there is one paper for TCs. I agree with you. There's really nothing out there for disclosure purposes, for guidance purposes. I think a 2-prong approach using guidance, and a disclosure makes perfect sense. Now, staff, are we able to, I don't know how we do this because it's a draft form from California, but we like to do things our own way in Texas. But are we allowed to look at this thing if Peter sends it over and we look at it at next meeting or something?
Yeah, Peter, if you want to send that just to me, the email address, we've been corresponding with that general
Sure.
one, then we can share that.
Happy to.
Thanks, Peter.
I do think it's important to make this two-sided so that I think it's important to let the other side know, because that agent always feels like they're in the dark when a TC comes out.
I think that's our biggest thing that we've all talked about is when we're in a transaction, all of a sudden you're like, well, that agent disappeared. Here comes the TC. Or maybe it was the TC the whole time and you didn't even realize it. I think that's really the crucial thing. And in one of our next topics, we're talking about this exact kind of similar issue here on disclosure. Mike, yes, sir.
Let's go. I'm going to go back to what Vanessa said earlier, that behind, and what Bob reiterated too, behind everything is a broker or an individual that's in charge of this. But we've been, part of our agenda items here are pages from different courses. And as Vanessa said, that isn't in here. And I think it would behoove us to put something in both the AI section and in something talking about TCs that, hey, you can use one, but your brokerage is still responsible for what that person does. And you need to make sure that you're working with somebody that's responsible. I think that would be a good addition to both of the, the next time these courses are reevaluated. I think that would be a good addition to it, because a lot of people don't think that way. They just say, oh, well, it's just a transaction. It's no big deal. My broker, I know my broker is involved in my business somewhere, but, but let's put it on the line that the broker needs to know that they're ultimately responsible and the agent is ultimately responsible for anything that goes on that contract.
Yeah, and I think we've included that in the last couple of courses, and of course we can reiterate it again. I don't off the top of my head remember, but I want to say we've got stuff on TCs in this one. It's hard because we can teach all day, but
oh, I know. And well, we were talking, last time we were talking about, I think that's why Peter probably got on this call, is that we were talking about, do we want to make this a licensed activity? And we're sitting there, and I think this is a phenomenal, knowing that you've got professional companies that are doing this type of thing, but reiterating maybe just a couple of lines in this section of the book that says, please be, and I know the whole book is about broker responsibility or about legal, wherever you're going to put it. It might be something just to say, hey, you need to pay attention. This is something that's affecting your brokerage.
I get that too, and I'm here for it. And I just am like, I don't have the book, the current book right in front of me, but I'm with you. We can certainly work at doing that. We've been having this conversation. I think it's just continuing the conversation and making sure people understand, what we're seeing from Peter sounds like, he's got a business model set up that seems, like it were. I mean, I've never used Peter services, but it seems like he's contemplated all of the ins and outs. Has everyone who's doing this work contemplated the ins and outs? No. But the more we start seeing, the practice and we're coming out making these statements as your regulatory body, I think that awareness does kick in. As it relates to the disclosure, I think that's interesting. It's interesting. It's a realtor disclosure, in versus the regulatory body. Going back to what we talked about earlier, in my update, we talked about, essentially a BLC disclosure. I say BLC because they're the ones that do it. And the commission, they didn't have the appetite for doing that disclosure, but it's interesting to see that there's an association who has. I think reading the language of that is good. I think hearing about, this actually reminds me of when we did the transaction coordinator working group, is hearing folks who are in the practice and the different approaches and learning more is actually really helpful, and getting the word out of what is, I hear the term transaction coordinator. I now know what it means. Originally, I had no idea. Someone who coordinates transactions, right? So I think these are the discussions to have. I'll look in the book, Mike. I'll get it I'll get it in there, and maybe it's a little bit of a different format. Like I like where you're going. I can't remember on the policies and procedures, but maybe it's a note on policies and procedures. Are you doing this? What do your policies and procedures say about this? Do you have somebody that you specifically want your folks using? Things like that. So we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything for you, Mike?
Am I allowed to say one more thing?
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Peter.
When and if something does come out to the broker policies and procedures at Mass, it's important that they understand the difference between licensed activity and unlicensed activity. It sounds awful, but we do still get. I got one this morning, a text from an agent saying, "Is Ashley brokered with me?" And I'm like, "No, she's not." And he's like, "Well, does she need to be?" And I'm like, "No, we don't do it," because he was in a CE class.
Makes
So
sense.
it gets lost.
I think you just said something very important, which is the definition of brokerage activity seems like it should be a weekly topic at all brokerages.
Agreed.
That's my thought on that, because you're right. I think people get lost in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Peter, we really appreciate you jumping on today. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Peter before we wrap up with Peter?
Thanks, you guys.
Appreciate it, Peter. You have a great
course.
afternoon, buddy. Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you. All right.
All right. Let's move on to a comment that came in for agenda item number 7 from Lori. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at that email that came through? For transaction coordinators, they should have to be named on the contract somewhere, is what she's saying. Did y'all take a look at this? Okay. And I'm sure you've read it. Since you've read it, do you have any comments or questions on this for Lori? Mike, yes, sir.
I like what Peter said.
Mhm.
Put it some type of. I think that this. Last time we were talking about licensed versus unlicensed and all that, and I think some type of a disclosure does not have to be on the contract itself. Just that there's some type of disclosure in there that somebody's else is looking at this contract. I really like that. I think that's
honestly
great.
I think it goes back to, I mean, we've talked about disclosures several times too, Mike. We've mentioned disclosing whether it's going to be a wholesale transaction or disclosing whether it's a transaction coordinator. I think it's a great. I think disclosure. What's the hurt in disclosing?
Yeah.
I really do not see.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, isn't there an old adage, like from the beginning of real estate? The old adage is disclose, disclose, disclose. I mean, come on, we've all heard this before. What is wrong with disclosure? It makes no sense.
If we put a disclosure on it, it makes it real easy for enforcement. When somebody doesn't.
It really does. I mean, it kind of just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes sensible things are hard to get done, but I think this is one where I think we're all on disclosure. Marvin, go ahead, buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did not wake up this morning deciding to be the devil's advocate on every issue, but I do have a thought of curiosity. That is, so I would agree that disclosure is great. I would agree that it is also helpful to know who's involved on various things. However, the devil's in the details, and what if the person who is helping on some of the steps is not called a transaction coordinator? What if they're a receptionist at the office or an administrator inside the brokerage? Maybe they're doing some things that we would kind of call transaction coordination, but they are maybe not the normal, what we all understand today as a transaction coordinator. And we also know that with innovation, what we call a transaction coordinator today in 2026 could be different than a transaction coordinator next year or 5 years from now. So I think in general, I like the idea, but I'm curious about the details of clarity on that.
I think that's a very valid point, Marvin. And I appreciate you being the devil's advocate. It's good because you open up our minds to things. And I think you've got a good point. I think it's something for discussion, but I do ultimately think that it goes back to let's disclose, and if it falls outside the guidelines, what's it hurt to disclose anyway? You know, that's just my thought process. But like I say, it's that's just my thinking on things. But I do agree with you because you know what? There have been multiple times, and I know we all have had this happen, where somebody in the office helps while you're on vacation, or helps while you need some help getting a form out or making a couple of phone calls, even if they are licensed, or not licensed, if they're an employee or whatever. I know that does make sense. I agree with you that it's not going to fall 100% in the lines every time. It makes sense. And I'm not being non-devil's advocate. I'm being advocate. I'm advocating. Okay, Bob. Yes, sir.
Okay, Marvin, you had another good idea. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of that because it happens every once in a while. But I think there are two things that I want to clarify or whatever. One, I think this falls under a broker policy issue, that a broker is going to determine within their brokerage how do TCs or someone that acts like a TC, how are they identified? What's their role? To me, that's going to be in the policy procedures manual. And I think the broker has to take an active role how they work so that we don't end up with the consumer not really knowing who's involved in the transaction. And this is a very, very important part of consumer protection, that, and not just consumer, but the other agents knowing, well, who am I really dealing with here? That falls down to the broker. So if we don't know who in the heck we're dealing with, I think that we ought to be able to go straight to the broker and say, what's your policy on this? I'm trying to deal with somebody and I can't get in touch with them. I can't work through it. And in addition to the disclosure, I think we also have a notice function that might be a paragraph 21 issue, because we changed that to go ahead and put the agent in there. Do we need to change that if we've got a transaction coordinator, that's the one who's receiving notices for the agent, for the client, do they need to be also in paragraph 21? So there may be a notice function in addition to disclosure.
Notice. That's a good one. That's a good one, Bob. Well thought out. You see, Bob, you've got all that knowledge built in there. It's really good. I love it, Bob. Thank you. Marvin, Bob, you guys add a lot of value. Thank you so much. Being devil's advocate,
yeah.
It's good. It's good. So I guess with that being said, I think these are all valid points. I mean, everyone has a different perspective, and Larry's got a perspective. We need to hear Larry out. Larry, what do you think?
I just wanted to follow up Bob. I mean, that's the challenge. No. Well, here's one more thing to add in, that a lot of the big companies, as I was former with a big company, is, using transaction coordinators that are not even here in the country. Right. That's another challenge where, I mean, if Marvin and as a broker of his company and me as a broker of my company, we have a agency violation that one of us could file on the other one. Now we've got, now there's because we're both licensed, right there, and you got a transaction coordinator, we could have agency issues, because now and Peter, I'm not saying your company, but I think that's the other thing we got to start thinking about is there's a lot of companies that are using transaction coordinators from, the Philippines and other countries. So we got to start thinking about that too. That's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
It does make sense. And, honestly, here's another thought process. AI is really going to have something to do with this thing too. So this thing will be ever evolving, even with AI as well. So some things that people do in the near future, AI can do it faster and better. It's one of those things where we're going to have to just keep our, finger on the pulse and, kind of look forward. But I do still think that the discussion is super important. And with both topics, whether it be AI or TC, I think it's a hot topic, and I think it's got to be looked at. Are there any other thought processes or questions or comments on on TC? Or do we want to move to do anything on this right now? How do we want to move forward? This is you guys. What do you think here?
And I'll just jump in. If you do want to continue this conversation, it sounds like Mr. McComb was going to send us the form that he's talking about. So you could also table it for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do we think, y'all? Do we want to table it? And let's take a look at this form as well, and then come back to the table with some other thought processes. Maybe we look at paragraph 21 for the next meeting as well. And we talk about this disclosure that Peter's going to send out. And then we kind of reconvene on this topic for the next meeting. Are we okay with that? Okay,
Yep.
Let's do that.
Yes.
Let's do that.
The other thing that I'd like to add is that we've talked about, Leslie brought up forms similar to the residential service contract form. I'd like to look at that from Abby and Vanessa's standpoint about what's involved in adding a new TREC form for something like this. I think that needs to be considered.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah. So Bob, what would you like to propose? Have some help from staff on looking at that for this? Or
Yes,
what
I'd like some direction from staff on that process. What's involved of going through the commission and adding new form? Is that simply a suggestion that this committee makes to broker lawyer committee? Is this a staff function that they would do that? What is that process that would make that happen? I think we need a better sense of how that would work.
So I'm happy to walk through that. So forms are tied to rulemaking. Now, of course, you've already made the suggestion that broker lawyer committee take a look at creating a form. And that's what Vanessa was talking about earlier, that they sought that feedback from the commission, and the commission was not interested in doing that at this time. If you're looking at a different angle, same answer, it would be connected to rulemaking. So any form that you want license holders to use, it would go through the rulemaking process, meaning you would make a recommendation to the commission, and then ultimately they would either say yay or nay on that recommendation. Depending on how far along you were and kind of the formation of that might take the form of, hey, we're just pitching this idea to the commission before we actually start working on it, just to kind of get a sense of whether there's interest there. I think that's probably what it would look like. And then, if there was interest, then you could move forward with sort of developing the content of the form, and the rule that would be attached to that.
Okay, Abby, that helps a lot. So as we're looking at that, if we have some indication that at least the idea is acceptable to move forward, who would actually create the form itself? Would that be broker lawyer?
Well, unless it's connected to the contracts, that's probably more an agency function. So like a staff function, staff would ultimately be the ones bringing you a draft. Unless we're talking about a contract related form, then that would be broker lawyer committee. But again, you've already gotten that feedback on that part. So I think what I'm hearing from everyone is not really necessarily a form that's tied to contracts, or a disclosure that's tied to the contracts, but more something akin to like the RSD form disclosure, the consumer protection notice or IBS. And those are not broker lawyer committee forms. Those are agency forms. So if that's the direction that the committee wants to move in, that would be, staff working in conjunction with this committee to create that.
So Ty, what is your thought about a form like that we could suggest to the staff to create that form for us to review?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. However, and I do think it's wonderful actually, but I do think we need to look at what Peter has there. And then maybe we make if we're going to make a recommendation, let's look at what he's got. And that way we'll have a more rounded thought process. And then if anybody else wants to bring up, for a good example, what Leslie was talking about, maybe there's a hybrid look we can make on this form that would make sense And it would be more all encompassing, you know, that's just my thought process, but you know, it's up to you guys. Any other thought processes on that? Are we good with waiting to take a look at everything before we make any recommendations or have anything? Anything else there? Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and table that. We'll table TC right now. And Peter, again, thank you for being here. Lori, thank you for providing your feedback as well in an email. We do appreciate you there. And you know, great, thoughtful, quality discussion over something that I think is really important. So good stuff. I think we'll move on to the next topic. If everybody's good there, we'll crank right on through. This will be pretty simple. Discussion on number 8, discussion and possible action regarding teams. Okay, it's another disclosure type thing that we've kind of talked about. And you know, just being transparent here, and I've got something that's created that would make sense, and I can also send this over as well for y'all to review. But basically, essentially here, if you can see it, I'll just kind of put it up in my screen. I know that's not the best. It's horrible. My virtual background really is killer. But essentially what it says is, if you want to think about it this way, when we, on the back of the contract, when we put down the brokerage firm, the brokerage license number, the associate's name, the team lead's name, the associate's email, the associate's phone number, the associate's license number, the supervisor of associate, license number, phone number of licensed supervisor, all that good information. The thing we're missing is the team name. Right here, right?
No, Ty, they're missing the team lead name. The team name is
Team
on
lead
there.
name, yes, that's what I meant. I put down team lead here for some reason, but I don't have team lead name. Hold on here. Team lead name is what we're missing here. We have a supervisor, and technically the supervisor should be the team lead. Should be. However, it's not exactly what we're seeing. So let's see here. Let me look. I've got another contract here, the old contract, and our new contract is much better when on the layout. But quite frankly, I think it's something to be disclosed and to be talked about. So thought processes on this. I mean, we've got a lot of information on here. The other thing is, I think that in reality, the supervisor should be the team lead. That's the way it's set up. Am I not correct? Right?
I think some people put their brokerage supervisor name there.
A lot of them do. They'll put their broker license, they'll put everything else. But the problem is that if you're running a team, and if you're on a team, technically your supervisor is supposed to be the team lead. Am I not correct?
Well, a team lead is required to be a delegated supervisor under commission.
But if you're on it, say Bob's on a team with Marvin, Marvin's the team lead. If Marvin's on the team, or Marvin's team, he's the supervisor. He's also the team lead. He's a supervisor. Bob works on that team. Wouldn't Bob put down Marvin as the supervisor?
If you're are you talking about on the contract, the broker
Yes.
information page? So it's just really the relevant information for that transaction. So right now it's got the team name as you pointed out, and then it's got a blank licensed supervisor of associate, I think is the terminology. So whoever that licensed supervisor of associate is, that could be, you know, there could be a couple layers there. It would just depend, I think, on the circumstances. But if what you're ultimately suggesting is, you know, having another line, which is what it sounds like you're saying.
That's essentially what it is.
On that page, that's certainly something this committee could suggest to broker lawyer.
And I think, go ahead, Bob.
To follow up on that, In my office, my largest team has a lead agent who is a delegated supervisor, but we have also two other agents on that team who are also supervisors under the rules for a supervisor, because they do give advice and work through agents and supervise other agents. So in a case like that, as Abby is pointing out, in a specific transaction, we could have just the lead agent for the team as a supervisor. And we could also have in another transaction, a different supervisor in addition to the lead agent. So that kind of disclosure, so that people know who the heck they're dealing with, we probably need to have room there to have those very transaction specific, because we have all the hybrids of how all that works. And while the lead agent is always going to be the delegated supervisor, there may be additional ones within a large team as we have.
So in your mind, would it be just, would you add a line for the team lead? Or would
I
you
think
just
so.
leave it supervisor?
Yeah.
Or what? Because it's, I mean, the way I look at teams is a little different, but I think that's part of the issue here. You know what I mean? Bob, I think that's the problem. So, yeah. What do you think, Bob?
Well, I think because we're looking at disclosure to the other agents, the title company, the consumer, about who's responsible on this. And it's one of the primary issues we have with teams is who is responsible for the teams. Well, it's the broker. You work through that process. And sometimes that's one of our problems within brokerages is teams kind of see themselves as their own company. And that creates an issue. So, but I think that on the broker information page, as we have a team name, I think we could have a team name / and then put the name of the lead agent. And then we already have the place for the licensed supervisor who could be the same person, lead agent, or it could be someone else on that team who's supervising on that specific transaction. So I think if you just added something where you had, in addition to the team name, you also had the lead agent who's responsible, that gives us some sense, because sometimes when there's a problem in a transaction and the consumer can't get in touch with the agent, if we've got the lead agent's name and information in here, they can get in touch with the lead agent. Otherwise, they go straight to the broker. And I get those calls because they don't have the information in the broker information page about what's going on in that transaction and who's responsible. So I think adding that additional information could help.
I think that makes sense. Okay, Bob, that's good clarification. Marvin, yes, sir.
This is going to be my third devil's advocate comment of the day. So just
how do we shut down?
Bear with
how do we
me
shut
on
down this meeting? How do we shut down the meeting real quick?
just don't kick me out of the meeting. Just don't kick me out of the meeting. So I think we really could rely on broker policy and procedures. We have a blank that says licensed supervisor. So in some teams, the team leader may be the person who is truly leading, guiding, directing the transactional details and implications for that team. In other teams, that team leader may be more of a marketing person, lead generation person, public face in terms of community, et cetera, but they may not be the compliance coach or director. Does that make sense? It can be two different roles that they play. Ultimately, the broker in their policy and procedure manual could say teams shall list X person as licensed supervisor on the form. It could be that the team lists, that the broker wants the team to list the leader of the team as a licensed supervisor because, to Bob's point, they are a delegated supervisor. Or it could be that the broker decides the team transactions are going to list a branch manager as licensed supervisor, or maybe it is the broker who's going to be listed as the licensed supervisor. So if we add another blank because it sounds good to have the leader of the team, that leader of the team may not even be the right person to contact for the transactional risk and dispute resolution processes on that transaction. Just my 2 cents.
I think those are good 2 senses. It makes sense. It does, because it's true. You never know. You never know the team structure, and that's, I think the idea here is, the premise of this thought process is to give a little bit more transparency. We're not trying to add any extra work or trying to add any extra confusion, but I think you've got a good point, because you're right. The teams are different, and they are structured in a different manner. I think that's it's just something. Sometimes it's hard to wrap your brain around when you look at the way some of these teams are done. But you know what? I actually did talk to a team a couple of weeks ago, and the team lead essentially is just a marketer. You've got a good point. That it really just depends on the team. Okay, let's see. Oh, Leslie. Okay. Hey, Leslie.
Hello. I think what we're trying here for is transparency. And what I've seen a lot, and I think everybody else can attest to this, is that one associate works with the client. You never even hear of the team leader or whatever. They're just working with the client. You get the contract, and that team leader or whoever it is name is on the contract with the associate's name nowhere to be found. So if you ever go back to look at who worked on that transaction, or even check, oh, what is this person's production or whatever else, you have no idea they work there. So even if we talk about broker responsibility and the point system and were you overseen for these transactions, you have no clue, because that person's name wasn't on that transaction. So I think not only should it be disclosed, I think there's a huge education part of this, saying this is the person that worked on the transaction. That's the name that needs to go on the contract for all parties to know. I mean, it's the same disclosure type of thing, rather than I'll just put my team lead's name so she can get the notoriety in MLS and all of everything, that the awards. So I think it definitely needs to be disclosed who's actually working on the transaction, not just who's leading that team.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think it's a very valid point. Any other comments on this? Let me go to the next page, because I don't want to miss somebody. Any other comments or thought processes here? All right, so do we have a plan of action? Do we want to do something on this, guys? How do we want to proceed here? Do we want to leave it as is? Do we want to move forward with something? Thought processes. Do we want to table it? Do we want to? What do you guys want to do here? I'm not forcing action.
Is there really a harm for adding a line to distinguish between those two people?
Between a team lead, supervisor, and the associate. Thought process. Do you want to table it? Do you want to move forward? Do you want to say forget it? What would you guys like?
Okay, I've got a point here, thought here.
Okay.
I really don't want to table anything else. We've been a lot of tabling, and I think we can address this. I think we need to have a consensus with the group here. We've got the information on the new forms with the associates information, a team name. The only thing that I see that is lacking, that I might like to see, is in addition to the team name, the lead agent, because the lead agent and the associate supervisor could be two different people. And so that could be an additional line that could be part of the same line that has the team name, although some team names are pretty big. So the only thing that I think would help with what Leslie was talking about is transparency, is that we know, in addition to the name of the team, if appropriate, also the lead agent, but also the associate and also the associate supervisor. If we have all that information in there, I think we've done the disclosures, we've got the transparency. And I think that even the title company, who looks at a lot of this information to decide who's doing what, and frankly, the E&O company looks at who the agent is involved in this. So I think all those factors come into play if we have all the appropriate people involved, and that becomes very transaction specific. So I think by adding that, to me, I think we've covered all our bases.
All right. Any other comments or words of wisdom along with Bob's to second what he's saying here?
You know, Mr. Chairman, I would say that
go ahead, Marvin.
maybe we share a thought with the commission or with broker lawyer for future revisions. I don't think this needs to be a priority for a complete new rule and a complete new form. I am personally more likely to say keep it like it is, but I do see the point about transparency and information.
Understood. Makes sense, Marvin. Larry.
I do like adding a line. I think as simple as that is, I think it would be something that would be really good as part of the contract. This way we know, we go back to, like Bob said, even with E&O, even if something comes up with E&O, it's a good thing to have something, just an extra line on the contract.
Okay. Marion, do you have any thoughts on this? No thoughts? Okay, I gotcha. Mike, any thoughts, sir?
Go back to what I said at the beginning. I'm a little nervous about how often we're changing forms and stuff, but I do agree that I mean, staff can make the determination on when this would happen, but I have no problem. I don't do a lot of work with teams, don't do a lot of sales, but I am always more in favor of disclosing who's in charge and who's doing what, so that people can find out who the heck they're going to get upset with when nobody answers the phone. So I have zero pushback on wanting to add another line on there to get the person that's responsible, that somebody working on the other side can find. I think that's great. I think that's an excellent idea. Timing is going to be the only issue I have. So I hate to agree with Marvin all the time, but
Hey, it's okay. It's okay.
But I'm a little nervous about how often we're changing these things. So
no, and
maybe it's just a sign of the times. So
right, and I get it, but I think practice makes perfect, right? Isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
So let me ask staff real quick, so I don't just throw something crazy out here. But if we said, hey, look, can we just suggest to broker lawyer to look into adding a line for this? Can we make that suggestion without having to revise the form right away or put it on with their future items? Can we do that?
Absolutely. We can pass that comment along to the committee, and they can take a look at that, just like any other comment they receive. Your worry, Mike, they are not moving to make changes anytime soon. There will be a legislative session, and I think changes, any subsequent changes would wait until after that. So I don't think it's anything that's happening right away, but we can certainly share that comment with the committee for their consideration.
That'd be great. And when you do share it, put a little star next to a little asterisk and say, hey, this looks like a good one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. I think
agrees.
Yeah, Marvin's happy with that. Marvin's happy. We're good. So Mike, thanks again. You and Marvin, it's really good because you really, I love getting the everyone's thought processes, because it really opens your eyes, because you don't think about it. You're sitting there and you're like, this is a great idea. Well, maybe it's not a great idea. Maybe it's a terrible idea. And it really takes everybody to look at things, and that's what makes us such a great group. Is that we all have different perspectives and different outlooks, and it's just really quite impressive and inspiring. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. Number 9, discussion and possible action regarding future meeting topics. Is there anything that anyone would like to add as a future meeting topic right now? We've got a couple of things that we're going to have on the future agenda anyway, but is there something that you have thought about that you'd like to add, or maybe make a suggestion on something you'd like to add for the next meeting? Anything maybe inspiring or something like that? Like Bob's wheels are turning. I can see it. If there's nothing we'd like to add at this point, it doesn't mean we can't add it for in the future. If we need to modify anything, just let us know. All right. Oh, go ahead, Marion.
Hey, Ty, I do have a question. Maybe next meeting, I'd really like to get a track update about the system and how everything is going with the system, because we've got some fired emails that cause a lot of panic in our agents. So I'm really curious to see how the new system's working. Do we strictly now have the ability to focus on that system and not focus on the other one? But some kind of an enlightenment with that would really be great right now.
We can do
That's
that.
a great idea. Are we able to do that, staff?
Yes, we can do that.
Hey, I appreciate it. That'd be awesome. Good suggestion, Marion. Anybody else? I'm just scanning through real quick. I just want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Now, Marvin, do you have anything that you'd like to add, maybe for the devil's advocate side of things?
Thank you for asking, Mr. Chair, but I'm good.
All right, perfect. Sammy, anything you'd like to add to the next meeting, or anything for us on it? Maybe a topic, or Brian? Anything,
Okay,
guys,
thank
there?
you.
Got it, buddy. Thank you, sir.
The only thing I have to say is how much I agree with Mike, who agrees with Marvin.
You're just kind of going down the devil's advocate side today. That's good. All right. Well, I think that's awesome. I think that's what we've got. Now let's talk about number 10, discussion and possible action regarding future meeting dates. October 7th. Let's quickly look at your calendars. Scroll through. Let's make sure everybody's good here. That's a Wednesday. Do we feel good about that? Anybody have any issues? All right. I don't see anybody else raising their hand with issues here. So let's go ahead and we'll stick with October 7th, 2026 at 10 a.m. And then we can adjourn this meeting. I hope you all have a great afternoon and a great day, and we will see you soon. Take care, guys.
Thank
Bye.
Great
you.
job, Ty. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.